You know I try to be a good man, I always give it my best. But truth be told, someday I wanna go to the wild, wild. You know I try to be a good man, I always give it my best. But truth be told, someday I wanna go to the wild, wild west.
And now, live from our smokehouse studio, it's time for Real Estate Jerky. All your real estate questions answered by our provocatively lean expert host, Ed Parcaut, MBA, veteran, and president of Lending for Living. And today's special expert guest, real estate advice you won't find anywhere else. Plenty to chew on, starting now.
Well, good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here with my guest, Stanislaus County Sheriff Jeff Dirkse. Sheriff, thank you so much for coming in today.
Well, thanks for having me, Ed. Appreciate it.
You know, it's really important for us to hear from our public people. You know what I mean? I appreciate the fact that you did serve, you're a prior veteran, and that you are still serving now. We appreciate that.
Oh, well, thank you.
A lot of people ask us why we do shows. You know, we do about real estate in the market, but we expand that to the community to see, you know, because when you buy a house and you live there, you want to know what's going on in the community, who supports the community, and so that's why we have people in like yourself to talk about that, because the most important thing for us is to help people buy homes and build personal wealth through home ownership. So again, thank you for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm sure, you know, being a sheriff is really difficult, right? I mean, you got to please a lot of people or make a lot of people upset. What do you want to go over today? I mean, I have a bunch of stuff here from, you know, our person they're talking about things today. Community safety, reported crime rate, response rate, you know, all those things are out there and people want to know about it. I want to get into how long you been on the job now?
Almost exactly 13 months.
All right. Was it exactly what you thought it was going to be? I mean, because I'm sure you talked to prior sheriffs and what their job was, but I mean, did you is it exactly what you thought, or is it?
I would say for the most part, yes. So Sheriff Adam Christensen, and I had been relatively close, and Adam had mentored me quite a bit, you know, in the process, both for the campaign, but then obviously more importantly for the job itself. And so I would think I was well prepared for it. We have a great community. We have a great team at the Sheriff's Department. That team works well in the community. We have the community support here is great, so that part's fantastic. It is busy. As you know, I have to go to court after this, testify on an old case I was involved in several years ago. But you know, so even that's just trying to balance several of my other events with going to court. It's, you know, a lot of times that type of thing can be a challenge.
So you have to still go to court for old cases that you were when you were not the sheriff,
correct?
Right? Well, yeah. Who else is going to do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's from when I was in Patterson.
Right. So I read on here that you were a West Pointer.
That's correct.
So did you play sports while you were there?
Well, everyone who attends West Point has to play a sport, whether it's at the intercollegiate level or down to the intramural level. You have to play a sport. I played rugby.
Okay.
At the club level. So there's intramural at the bottom, intercollegiate at the top. Club at the time was right in the middle. Now at West Point, rugby is actually an intercollegiate sport. But yeah, so I did that. It was a good time.
Yeah.
Never done it before, so it was something new.
And then, so for me, I mean, it's always go Navy. I apologize, but as I was telling you before we got on, my son's in the Army, right?
Correct.
And he just got out of airborne a couple weeks ago. Now he's up in Alaska and loving it, which, you know, it's 20 degrees still there,
yeah,
right? Or colder. It's still snowing. It's like, and we're here 70 degrees this week, you know, and it's like, what's going on here with the weather?
Yeah. It's interesting. My son is actually going to West Point in June. So,
really?
Yep, it'll be the second generation.
There you go. Yeah, my son definitely was not ready for college. You know, we're like, go enjoy it, figure out what you want to do for sure, and then go. Because that was like myself when they told me I was going to be a blue collar worker when I was in high school. I barely, you know, it just wasn't for me. And then I joined the Navy, was a corpsman, got my bachelor's and master's while I was in, and then got out. And I'm like, I was able to do what I wanted to do with it. So.
Military I have never heard anyone, at least since the volunteer military, who's ever said, I wish I didn't do it. Typically what I hear from most folks who did not serve in the military is, I wish I would have done it.
Right. I mean, I tried to get my middle daughter to do it, but, you know, it's a little different.
Right.
She's more of a Bernie Sanders kind of person. So we'll just leave it at that.
Got it.
Yeah. Which is fine. I don't care how your beliefs are. We all got to get along, but just make sure you state what you know as facts, not just what you hear from somebody else.
Absolutely.
Research it a little bit more. All right, so let's get into about yourself. How long, why don't we start? Okay, I know you were you were at West Point, and then you graduated, and then were you in the Army?
Yes, I was in the Army. I did about 5.5 years on active duty the first time, and served in the 101st Airborne Division and 2nd Ranger Battalion, one of our special operations units. Got out in 1999.
So you were definitely Special Forces?
Special Operations. Special Forces is a branch. That's the Green Berets. Special Operations is sort of a category. It includes Special Forces, the Ranger Regiment, 160th Special Operations, Aviation Regiment on the Army side. The SEALs would be Special Operations, though, in the Navy.
My question was, because you said airborne. So did you go airborne, jump out?
Correct.
All that fun stuff?
Yep. I think I have 24 jumps. I'd have to go back and look at my jump log. I knocked myself out on one of them, so that might be why I can't remember.
Yeah, well, whenever they're watching them jump out of the planes, they go out of each door, right? And if they don't get it right, they collide, right?
Yes,
and
they do.
One was on top of the other person's chute and had to roll off and all that stuff you learned. So
And
I didn't realize at the time that there was, Navy going through there, Air Force going through there, Marines were going through there. It's not just an Army thing.
Correct. Yeah, all branches go to the same jump school.
That's amazing. Anyway, I'm sorry.
But so anyway, I got out in 99, came back here. My family has a ranch east of Janeiro, and I ran our farming operations. After 9/11, I knew I would go back in some capacity, and it took a while to figure out exactly what that was going to be. Ended up going in the National Guard and deployed to Iraq. We got mobilized in 04. I actually went to Iraq in January of 05. I commanded an infantry company in Iraq in 05, and it's Delta 184. It's the unit that is in Oakdale. So if any of your listeners are familiar with the Oakdale Armory, I commanded that unit in Iraq. Came back in 06 and knew I wouldn't go back to farming, at least not full-time. And so several of my soldiers had been their civilian job was in law enforcement. And they had really encouraged me to look at that as a profession. They said it would suit you. And simultaneously, a lot of our local agencies were recruiting. And so did one ride along with the Sheriff's Department and went home and told my wife I found my new profession. Went to the police academy a couple months later, and I've been with the Sheriff's Department ever since. In fact, in 11 days, it will be my 13th anniversary with the Sheriff's Department.
Well, congratulations.
Well,
Since I won't see you in 11 days, I'm sure. I hope.
Yeah. Most people don't actually want to.
Yeah, I was telling my wife I was going to make a joke that normally I'm not sitting in front of you. I'm usually behind you. And she's like, that's not funny.
I think it's funny.
I think it is. I mean, it's amazing because, when I have been pulled over, because I know I did it. Mm-hmm. When they walk up and they say, do you know why? It's like, well, you want me to say yes, or you want me to act like everybody else and say, no, I don't know why you pulled me over?
We appreciate honesty. Honesty, a lot of times will get you further than dishonesty. So
yeah, right.
It's helpful.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Now, I'm off subject a little bit here because we were talking about your experience, but now when somebody does get pulled over, I know, sheriff or PD, do you guys, I was told once, turn the lights on in the car. If it's at nighttime, roll down the windows. Would that throw somebody off? Or
No. Probably the single biggest piece of advice is just keep your hands on the steering wheel and where we can see them. Roll down the window. Lights on is great. Traffic stops and domestic violence are the two most dangerous things that we go to. So all law enforcement officers are going to be somewhat keyed up for any kind of traffic stop, just because you don't know who it is that you're getting. And so, when whoever it is asks you for, license and registration, just feel free to get it. Sometimes if it's someplace that you have to dig around, you might want to ask them, hey, it's over there, in the center console, in the purse, whatever the case may be. And they'll tell you fine. But it's always best, just communicate. Just talk to the guy and say, hey, it's here. Do you want me to grab it? Whatever.
Okay. Because there's more I want to get into, and, they're signaling we have a few, seconds before we go to break. But one of the things I want to talk about is the concealed weapons permit. Everybody talks about it. They want to know about it. For me, I think it's very important. I mean, I'm glad that we have it in our county. I don't know how much it helps protect us, and not individually, but as a community.
Yeah.
And maybe we could get into that when we get back a little
Absolutely.
bit. All right.
Sounds great.
All right. Hey, we'll be right back after this break. Listeners, if you have questions or comments, dial pound 250, say the keyword Real Estate Jerky. Again, that's pound 250, say the key phrase Real Estate Jerky. You can also send us questions on Facebook or to radio@realestatejerky.com. Keep listening. We'll talk to you when we get back. All right, first segment down.
All right. It goes fast.
10 minutes.
Yep. It just flies.
The first show we did, because I used to have a co-host, it was like tick, 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 tick. And after that,
Yeah.
it was done. You're like, what? We're done?
Remember the first time that they came in here for whatever, I didn't remember. It might have been Kevin Fox's show. I don't remember. It's like, oh, we're going to talk about all this stuff. And I bet I got out 10 or 20% of kind of what I wanted to say. It goes fast.
All right, so besides that, what I talk about, what do you want to say today?
I tend to prefer whatever you want.
No, I'm good
whatever your
because
listeners
she
want.
kind of put a little things on here, but is there something you want to get out that's important right now? Because here's the thing: is let's do it early in the next 12 minutes, and then that leaves us 12 and 9 to kind of go into other stuff. And all right, so when we get back, I'm going to talk about there's a lot I want to get into. I was talking about concealed weapons permit, but let's talk about staffing, how we doing, and we'll get through that part. So, because I know you guys always need people.
But we're doing really good right now.
Good. Well, I know for a while there you couldn't get good people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right, this one's 12.
Okay.
Real Estate Jerky is back on Power Talk 1360. Chew on that.
That's right, we're back. And if you're just tuning in, I'm Ed Parcaut, President of Lending for Living, and your host. I'm along with my guest, Stanislaus County Sheriff Jeff Dirkse. Jeff, during the break, we were talking about a few different things, and you brought up staffing.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about with staffing?
So the Sheriff's Department is in a really good position right now with staffing. Historically, especially since the recession, we have struggled. Every local law enforcement agency has struggled with staffing. We are just too close to a lot of the Bay Area agencies. And they pay more, and they draw a lot of our staff from our organizations. And so, shortly after I was elected, I met with the county CEO, and he said we have to have a durable solution to identify this. At the time, I think in the prior 11 years, and I might mess this up a little bit now, it's getting fuzzy, but I think we had hired 150 deputy sheriffs, trained them all, but we had a net gain of only 22.
Wow!
And so, when you did the math, it turned out to be $500,000 that we spent per net deputy sheriff. And that's not sustainable. So long story short, the CEO's office, my team, and created a new classification called Deputy Sheriff 2. The board approved it. And basically what it did is it requires 4 classes and at a minimum of 2 years of experience for our deputies. And then they automatically become a Deputy Sheriff 2. And that comes with a 10% pay raise. And so we rolled that out to them in October of 2018. It actually went into effect in January of 19. But since that date in October of 18, we have not yet to date lost a single deputy to another agency. We have one who's going to lateral out here in a couple of weeks, so I'm not going to be able to say that pretty soon. But the importance of that and the support that the county gave us is we normally hovered around 160, 165 deputies out of authorized 180 positions. Today, we sit at 181 deputies.
Wow.
And the board actually gave me 8 additional positions July 1st. So I have 7 vacancies, but we are in such a better spot than we were just 18 months ago. And what that does, that allows us to do more for the community. Because when we're at 160 or below, we're doing the minimum. So we have restored our 3 school resource officers in conjunction with SCO, Stanislaus County Office of Education. Scott Kuykendall, their new superintendent, he and I hatched a plan. They help fund them. And we have 3 SROs back in the county schools, which is still not enough, but it's a 300% improvement over where we were a year ago. We've also brought back our community deputy program. And that we haven't had that since 2010. And these are deputies that are assigned to a lot of our outlying communities, Salida being the biggest one that's an unincorporated town, and so they don't have their own police force. And they fall within our beat, and they get service through our beat deputies, but they also have a lot more needs that we are now able to service through the community deputies. And I'm talking things like homelessness, illegal marijuana grows, gang activity, whatever the case may be. These community deputies have the time to commit to dealing with a lot of those issues.
Okay, and also during the break we were talking, you said to remind you about Fusion.
Yes, so
or whatever it's going to be called.
I call it the Fusion Center, which is probably not what it's going to be called, but I'm a pretty staunch supporter of the Second Amendment and people's right to have a gun. And so I don't believe that this issue of gun violence, and I'm talking more like this active shooter type of situation, it is not a function of we need more laws or less guns. Because if you think about it, like let's say it's at a school, well, carrying a gun into a school zone is illegal, and half the times the weapons that they use are illegal, and actually shooting people is illegal. So the law does not actually deter someone from breaking it. So all of that being said, though, it's still incumbent on law enforcement. We have to do more to try to prevent these things. So we are going to form a unit. It's actually, we sort of soft started it now about 2 weeks ago. It will kind of formally launch here in July 1st with our new budget. But this unit's specifically going to focus on trying to weave together a lot of threads. And when you look retrospectively at a lot of these incidents across the country, people have always had indicators, right? John Doe, yeah, that guy, there were some issues with him. He was making some really strange statements. I wish I would have said something. Or they do say something, but maybe they call the sheriff's department. We take a report, but he lives, let's say, in the city of Modesto, works in the city of Oakdale, and his kids go to school somewhere else. Well, so there's all of these different entities that have a piece of the information, but not the whole. So what we want to try to do with this Fusion Center, it's basically an intelligence center. We want to try to have kind of a clearinghouse, a place for all of this information to go, get tracked, assimilated, evaluated for what's the validity of it, how true is this threat, and that way potentially we can take action if needed. Now we're very concerned as well about protecting the First Amendment, right? People have a right to say or think what they want, and we are duty bound to respect that. At the same token, though, it's if that thought, that the ideology turns to action, that may be where we need to get involved. And we are kind of going to build this plane as we start to fly it. It's new. It's not something that we've ever done before, but we think that this is going to be a great tool to help keep our community safe.
I think it will be. I think that's because one of the, there's so many of those people you've heard that just what you said. I heard something, I didn't know who to tell. We told the FBI, but the FBI didn't tell so-and-so,
Yep.
Or I told the local person and didn't get passed on. And, because you were talking about the Second Amendment, because I think it's very important. I really like the fact that you have the concealed weapons permit, and you guys support that, and
Yes.
it's important. So, do you remember how many there used to be before?
I don't know off the top of my head. We have, if memory serves, we have about 8,000 right now in Stanislaus County. Might be a little bit lower, but around 8,000.
And that's not counting MPDs, right?
That's correct. I'm talking now just Sheriff's Department CCWs that I have issued out.
Right. And why are you so supportive of that?
So when you think about Stanislaus County, we're over 1,500 square miles. And while we are doing well with our staffing right now, as we just talked about, we have a lot of folks, and they might live in town or they might live, way out in the country somewhere. Response times can be a while. Where I used to live specifically, even if there was a major incident, it was probably going to take one of my team, 5 or 10 minutes to get there. And I'm talking running code with lights and sirens and everything. And so, when you're on your property, you don't actually need a CCW. But for a citizen, a responsible citizen who's gone through the training to carry a concealed weapon, it gives them a tool to defend themselves if it ever comes to that. It's a personal decision. Some people are not willing to use, they don't think they could ever utilize that tool. Then they shouldn't carry. But I tell people all the time, get the training, get the CCW. Just because you have it doesn't mean you have to carry. But if you choose to carry, then you should do it legally and correctly and have that CCW.
Right. And then, because a lot of people, once you go through the class, you realize, wow, if I shoot somebody, even if I'm right, I could actually still go to jail for a short period, and then go through this whole process. So you have to really be willing to do that.
Correct.
And that,
and that brings up another great point about the training. It's not just the physical training of how to manipulate the firearm, how to carry it, how to hit the target. It's also that whole legal primer that goes behind it of when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate, what kind of tactics you should use to try to de-escalate or get away from the situation, all of which are very important. And then obviously what's going to happen if it ever comes to that. Because you're right. There's a good chance when we show up, you might get handcuffed and put in the back of a patrol car until we sort out exactly what happened. You're going to get interviewed. You could get sued, not by us, but by whoever was shot.
Or the family of the person.
Yep, absolutely. And so these are all things that people have to consider. And so there's a lot that goes into it. But take the training, get the permit. You don't have to carry, but if you want to carry, have the permit.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Now, if you are carrying, since you're the sheriff, and you get pulled over, because you go through the training, they say, should you tell them? Should you not tell them? Should you wait till you're asked about it?
No, so this is my response to that. If you get pulled over and you are carrying, with your permit, you absolutely should tell them that you're carrying. Let's face it, I've been pulled over as a cop, right, and off duty. Actually, once on duty when I was undercover. So that's a separate story. But you always want to, because that way, if for whatever reason the gun becomes visible, you've already said that it's there.
Right.
They're probably going to ask you for your permit just to review it. But you always want to say, now, if you have a permit but you're not carrying at that time for whatever reason, to me, there's no need to bring it up. There's just there is no weapon there that might cause an issue. So again, if you're carrying, absolutely. Tell the officer or the deputy that you're carrying, and if you're not, it's not relevant.
Okay. And then, what if you had it in your lockbox? Because you always should have a lockbox in your vehicle, right?
Correct.
So if it's in there and it's usually going to be loaded, should you at that time or just
at that point? I would say
you just say I have it, but
it's locked up in my box. That's in wherever the box is. You absolutely should.
Because you go in places now where, you can't take it in a school. There's certain places you can't go, right? And we all know that.
Yep. And let me talk about that real quick. I would absolutely tell everyone that if you have a weapon in the vehicle, by law, it must be locked and secured. So, separately from, say, just your trunk or something like that. Because we find it all the time. I had it in my center console. Well, that's not secured. And by the way, when it gets stolen, and then it goes back out there in the wild, and now there's a gun on the streets.
Now, unless the center console has a lockbox in it.
Correct.
But then they could still break into that. I mean, once your vehicle's stolen, if they're taking the vehicle, they can break into anything.
Of course, they can. But it's just sort of that due regard to protect it.
All right. So that's when we're going to go to a break. When we come back, we'll pick up some more of this and we'll go from there. We're heading out to a break. As a veteran myself, I think it's important to support members of our military. And this week's, I got a shout out to Chris Winter, owner of Direct Appliance, the Valley's best kept secret of home appliances. I went there for my appliances myself, and they're on McHenry Avenue in Modesto. So please visit them. And when we get back, we'll tell you more. All right.
Bought appliances from Direct Appliance twice.
We're building a house up in Twainhart. Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
My wife works for Kaiser, and she told me a year ago, when I retire, I want to be away from people. And we had just bought a cabin 6 years earlier in Cold Springs.
Okay.
Like, you couldn't have told me back then when I could have gotten so much cheaper.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so
what else do we want to talk about?
Let's see. All right, so I got there. Well, I guess now everybody knows I have a concealed weapon. Permit.
Good.
Yeah, no, but it's like people. Do you? Someone asks you if you're carrying. I'm like, you never ask somebody if they're carrying because they're always carrying. If you think.
Right.
I'm not, but I'm just saying you always. My biggest thing is when I went through the class, how they told me to, because I went to Vince's, right? And he's like, so I had like 6, right? So I had a P220 and a P226, right? A 9 and a 45. My 45 is ported, so it doesn't kick at all.
Right.
But the problem is, then I had a Smith & Wesson M&P, which was a 357, and that's what I carried most of the time. But when you shoot that, it hurts, right? Because the kick. And so he's like, you should have the same across, meaning the same manufacturer, even if it's smaller guns, whatever. That, and you know exactly, you don't have to think about it. So I ended up getting rid of it and getting a 229.
Yeah.
You know?
See, I exclusively carry Glocks now.
Yeah.
I have a 43 for off duty. I carry a 19 most of the time. I have 2 of those, and then I have a 34 that I compete with.
Okay.
And so it's the same gun. They're all 9mm. They function exactly the same way. That my comp gun doesn't have a light on it, but all my other guns have lights on it that operate the same way. It's just one thing to train with.
All right, we got 112, so we got to get rid of it.
Okay.
Sorry, I was going to keep talking to you, but for me, SIGs, I don't even have to look.
Right, exactly.
I know, I just point and shoot, and it's good to go.
Leaving the bull behind, it's Real Estate Jerky.
That's right, we're back with our guest from Stanislaus County Sheriff Jeff Dirkse. I'm your host, Ed Parcaut, president of Lending for Living. And, during the break, we were talking a little bit more about concealed weapons permits and stuff. And we didn't get into what next do you want to talk about, right? I always ask people before we come back. We're kind of on a time crunch today. But from my perspective of a concealed weapons permit, I think it's very important because you never know what's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. It's nice to be prepared. When we go to move, I'm telling my wife she needs to get hers, because we'll be in a different county, which I assume they'll have the same not ease, but you know what I mean?
Right.
It's not as hard as it in other areas to get the concealed weapons permit.
Right.
As long as you have the training and need, you can get it.
Yep.
Right. But I do want to kind of go back to, what do you think is the biggest challenge for you as sheriff right now in Stanislaus County?
I would tell you that probably hands down mental health. Mental health is probably one of the single biggest things that we deal with, and I'll include addictions in that. The mental health and addiction, obviously, where we see it probably the most is with the homeless population, right? You take a 30-second drive, and you're going to be seeing someone who's homeless. But we don't see it just there. A lot of our gang members have some level of both of those based on the circumstances that they were brought up in, getting hooked on drugs that then, lead to other things. Gang activity can actually cause PTSD of all things, which creates some of its own mental health issues. We see it in domestic violence, not as much like the mental health aspect necessarily, but if you look at a lot of the addictions, it's either drug or potentially alcohol related addiction issues that come into play there. So between mental health and addiction, that's probably the single biggest challenge, and it's a very broad scope. So I'm casting a wide net here, but as we look at public safety, law enforcement across the board.
And because, your officers have to deal with that on a daily basis. Yes. I know a lot of people who do have mental illness, instead of taking their drugs, will go to some type of other drug,
yes.
right? Legal drugs to deal with it because they don't like the way that their one medication makes them feel, and then it gets worse and yada, yada.
Absolutely.
So how do we deal with, how do we fix this?
Well,
is there a way?
What I'm going to say with that, I'm not really going to address how you fix the mental health and the addiction side. You're going to have to talk to...
We've had politicians in here, and they all have their idea.
Maybe get Ruben Imperial from BHRS in here. He can speak to more, I guess, what I'll call the medical side of it. But what I would tell you is that you always have to have the carrot and the stick. So for a lot of these folks, being homeless, and let's just use just the homeless aspect of it right now. Locking them all up in jail doesn't solve the root problem. That doesn't mean they should not go to jail, so let me be clear on that. But that doesn't solve the problem. On the same token, doing nothing but providing them services or making services available that they don't want to avail themselves of, that doesn't really solve the problem either. So that's why I say there has to be kind of the carrot and the stick approach. So when we deal with, it's not illegal to be homeless. That being said, they do commit a lot of crimes. A lot of those crimes are misdemeanors. They are lower level crimes, at least the crimes that impact a lot of the community as a whole. So we have to do a better job of enforcing the law on those crimes, trespassing, littering, city ordinance or county ordinance violations. So that's kind of the stick aspect of it. And then you also have to have on the other side the way out of the root problem. Yeah, yep, they will be held accountable for whatever their law violations are, but we've got to also give them a way out. I think the challenge that we see specifically right now in the state of California is that they like to go with the all carrot approach. Let's offer them all of these free things and all of these services, to get them out of whatever their situation is. That needs to be there, but we also have to have the stick, because when you deal with a lot of this population that's out there, many of them don't want to leave the circumstances that they are in. I'll be the first to say I don't believe that any kid in school, drives through Modesto or Stanislaus County and says, "Hey, I really want to grow up and be homeless," right? People don't aspire to that. But when they find themselves in that situation, however they got there, and after they've lived in that for a period of time, there is a large group of this population that they are comfortable there. And if we really want to address this challenge across the board, we have to get them out of that comfort zone, because they are causing problems for the community as a whole. We have to do that with the stick, right? That's where law enforcement comes in. But we need to keep that carrot out there to give them the way out. But it's kind of a two-handed approach.
Yeah, because I used to say, sometimes to get unreasonable people to do reasonable things, you have to get them uncomfortable and force them that way.
Absolutely.
It's, because your hands, from what, I've been having a lot of people on here about politicians, and they were talking about the $950 thing, right?
Yes.
Which I'm sure that really ties your hands a lot.
It does. So it was actually speaking with a group this morning, and we talked about that very topic, where if someone went into some sort of a department store, and they know that anything under $950 is a misdemeanor, they will literally go in there with a calculator or their phone or whatever the case may be. They will steal items up to $930 or $40, right, just below that threshold, and they'll literally just walk out the door. And many of those type of stores, their internal policies prevent their employees from taking any kind of hands-on action to prevent that. And that's a challenge. It's a challenge for them, right? That business, they have just a loss that they take on something like that. But it's that misdemeanor level crime that, if the DA's office, if they prosecute it, right, because they have a capacity issue as well. They have 20,000 cases or whatever that they take in every year. They only have the capacity to prosecute a certain number of those. And then, if they are ultimately prosecuted and sentenced, then I have a capacity in my jail that I can't exceed to hold them. So there are certain things where there's no stick to that crime. So these are big challenges. I know one thing in the sheriff's department that we have done to try to address a lot of these misdemeanor issues specifically, we've reevaluated our jail capacity. And we can't change the number of beds that we have. That's a fixed number. There's physically the number of beds that are there. But in the early 90s, there was a court decision out of federal court that said we could only hold basically 90% of our rated capacity due to overcrowding and so on. Well, we found that decision. It took some doing. And we had our legal team reevaluate it, and the determination was that it only applied to the facilities that were in operation at the time the decision was rendered. Well, the joy is that we only have one facility out of our 4 true jail facilities that was in operation. So, long story short, that allowed us to create an additional 70 to 100 beds. Again, the beds were there. It just allows us to hold more people. And we are specifically targeting the misdemeanor population, and specifically those who have 3 or more FTAs, a failure to appear. So it means they've been arrested, and 3 or more times they have not gone to court to have that case adjudicated. So now if they get arrested, they're going to stay in jail until they go before a judge. And in November, when we implemented that, there were over 13,000 misdemeanors in Stanislaus County alone that were outstanding misdemeanors. We don't know how many of those were for the 3 or more FTAs. That was not tracked, but we could probably hazard a guess and say 25 to 50%, just making up some numbers. So a significant number. And it took us about 2 weeks at most to fill those beds, and they've been full ever since.
So, but has that helped cut that down, would you say, or is just because you only had 180 beds there's more of them than there is the
There's
beds.
more of them than we have the capacity for, but very optimistic that the board is going to fund an additional 32 deputy positions for the SO. That will allow us to open all of our jail facilities fully. So right now they're all built. Right, we had $150 million worth of new construction in the last several years, but I'm not funded to operate all of them, and I believe the board will fund that.
And how many more beds would that be?
Oh, we're going to get another about 350 beds out of that, and that is going to start making a dent in this population.
So now that if it's all right, so say that they had the failure appear, the ones we were just talking about, you arrest them. What's the process? I mean, they go to in front of the judge and they say, okay, well, here, you pay a little fine and get out. I mean,
well, it depends. So obviously, they would appear. They have to appear before a judge within 48 hours for arraignment. The judge could release them then or not, but on their own recognizance and then set a court date down in the future. But what we are working with, we've had several meetings on this. The most recent was last week. What we are looking at doing between the district attorney's office, the public defender, and the courts themselves is streamlining the process to get these folks in front of a judge and hold them to real sentences. So another challenge that we've had with realignment and Prop 47 and so on is that several years ago, when, say, possession of methamphetamine was a felony, that eventually you could get sent to state prison for that, maybe for a year or two. Or you could be offered drug court and a diversion program to go get drug treatment. Well, that drug treatment program might be 6 weeks. Well, 6 months. 6 months of drug treatment versus a year or two in prison, a lot of them opted for drug treatment. The way that it sits right now, they may be sentenced to 30 days in county jail, and minus good time credits and some state mandated, reduction in sentencing, that might be a week or two. So now their option is a 6-month drug treatment plan or program, or a week or two in jail. Many of them just take the week or two in jail. So they're not actually getting the help that they need to solve the real problem. And again, it's the carrot and the stick. We've given them a lot of carrots. Now we need to give some more sticks.
Yeah, I wonder about that because I remember someone telling me about the same thing where they used to be able to go either you're going to have this or you're going to go to the treatment, and most people would go get the treatment. And then I don't know what the percentage of rate of success was for the treatment. Do you know at all?
I don't. I can't speak to that.
Okay. But I mean, at least it gets some people off the, through that process.
Absolutely.
And I mean, you see it as you're driving down the streets, the homeless population, that's the same thing. If they could get them to go get treatment, they might stay with treatment and they might not, but at least we're trying, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Hey, we're going to take a break. Let me remind you can find every one of our shows via podcast on iHeart.com as well as YouTube. Just Google Real Estate Jerky, follow us on Facebook, and we'll be right back.
How long is the last one?
9 minutes.
All right.
You'll be out of here at 1:35.
Yeah, we'll be good.
All right. So this is 9 minutes. I'm gonna go like this.
Yep.
So what more? So my big thing. What do you want to talk about the whole illegal immigration thing and all, or just how that affects you guys, or do you not want to bring that up? Because you're at the point where you're talking about that's overcrowding, and if you could get them out of your jails, you could get somebody else in there, right?
It would probably take at least 9 minutes. Let's skip that one. I'm doing a number of things around the county to talk that particular topic.
Okay.
So people are welcome to attend those. What about marijuana? Illegal marijuana grows.
All right.
Let's talk because growing season is coming up.
Or the black market. How's the let's bring up how we were talking during the break about marijuana, and then I'll just let you take over.
Sounds good.
All right. Ready? Have trouble over there. Ready?
Real Estate Jerky is back on Power Talk 1360. Chew on that.
That's right. We're back for our final segment. I'm Ed Parcaut, your president at Lending for Living, and I'm with my guest, Stanislaus County Sheriff Jeff Dirkse. Jeff, if that's okay, I call you Jeff. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Or Sheriff.
Whichever you prefer.
During the break, we were talking about marijuana.
Yes.
And then what did you want to bring up about that?
Yeah, so marijuana is kind of an ongoing challenge, and I'm specifically talking now about our illegal grows. Regardless of your opinion of marijuana, whether we should have it legal or not, it's here. The people have spoken, And so now my duty is to deal with the illegal side. So last year we estimated that there were 1,500 illegal grows across Stanislaus County, and we had become a bit of a home for them. And so we really made a very concerted effort last year to go after the illegal grows, and eradicated at least about 90 illegal grows through true enforcement efforts. And then we also started sending a lot of abatement letters, where basically what that says, if they're a smaller scale illegal grow, we're like, we know you have a grow, you've got X amount of time to get rid of it, and if you don't, we'll come get rid of it for you, and we'll give you all expenses paid tour of the jail. And so what we don't know is exactly how many were eradicated as a result of that. And I have talked to many of the members of the legal cannabis industry, and they believe that our enforcement efforts have had kind of a strong payoff, and that some of these illegal grows are self-selecting out because they know we're going to get to them. And the other thing that we've done with that is we've worked with the county council, the county's attorneys, and the board of supervisors. So we have a new ordinance. It's $1,000 per plant per day on a grow. Wow. So if you think about it, if somebody has 1,000 plant illegal grow, which is not that, it's actually quite common. You're talking about $1 million fine for one day, and those could ultimately be levied against the property itself. So we have a lot of tools now. Growing season is coming. A lot of the outdoor grows now, they actually grow them in hoop houses, so they do have more of a year-round type of component to them, but they slow down in the winter.
What's a hoop house?
A hoop, kind of like a greenhouse, PVC pipe, plastic netting across the top. Maybe it's 2x4s instead of PVC pipe, but kind of a temporary greenhouse. And it just lets them grow more grow cycles every year. So we are expecting another very active enforcement season. So if any of your listeners or either have an illegal grow or probably more likely are aware of one, reach out to local law enforcement. Specifically, if it's in the sheriff's department jurisdiction, what I would tell you not to do is call either the 911 or the emergency number from dispatch. We are not going to send a patrol deputy to do it. You can report them. You could email me directly. If you go to the sheriff's department website, you can email me personally right off of the homepage, and I will forward it to staff. You could do it through Crime Stoppers. Many people send it to their supervisor. And they'll forward it to me, and then we'll get them on the list.
So you think that's really helped a lot with get rid of the illegal grows? Because I heard that the black market for marijuana has grown so much because of the legal aspect of how costly it is.
Yes. The black market. So my general view is this: if we're going to make legal marijuana work, and again, I'm not judging the validity of that. We have to get rid of this illegal black market to the best of our ability, because then everything, it's a known quantity, it's a known product, or at least as much as you can with any biological product. It has what do they call it? The seed to smoke tracing. So in theory, you know exactly where it came from and what type of chemicals were used on it. We have to do what we can to make that work. And this is the example that I often use. I'm not sure where you live, but somebody lives in a neighborhood. They just spent a bunch of money put in a new pool in their backyard, and their neighbor behind the fence or a couple doors down has an illegal grow in their backyard. Come June, it gets pretty hot. That stuff starts to stink. I get emails all the time. I can't even enjoy my backyard because it smells so bad. I just put in this pool. I tried to have friends over for a barbecue. It's a quality of life issue, and we also see a lot of crimes of violence around illegal grows. Even some of our legal operations, we've had a couple on the west side where they have essentially business invasion type of armed robberies. But there have been a couple of noteworthy examples at the legal ones, but it occurs far more often at the illegal grows. So it's a threat to public safety. I'm not talking about the marijuana. I'm talking about the illegal grow. So we have to do everything that we can to eliminate those. And we are making a very concerted effort to do it. Our enforcement last year was about 3 times what it was the year before. We are getting rid of plants as fast as we can.
Well, that's good. I mean, one of the issues that I still see even though it's legal now, you have a neighbor smoking it, right? Now you can smell it in your house.
Yep.
For some people it gives them a headache, right?
Yep.
And there's nothing you can do about that.
Correct.
Right? But if it was, secondary smoke, cancerous, you might be able to.
And it is. That's the thing. Everyone thinks that marijuana is this benign medicinal plant. I'm not even going to say that, but if you're smoking it, you're still having the challenges associated with smoking something.
Right. All right, so we got through the marijuana issue. Any other major drug going on that you?
Well, a lot of folks are very concerned about this opioid crisis. While it is here, it is not to the extent that you see in the media in other parts of the country. Specifically, kind of the further east you go, I think the worse it gets. We do have fentanyl specifically here. We have seized it on a number of occasions. It is a concern to our community, but it's just not at the severity that we see elsewhere. So by no means are we downplaying it. It's just, if anyone is concerned about that, it's not as bad here as it is elsewhere.
So would you say that the marijuana illegal grows is the biggest headache?
It is definitely one of the biggest headaches, and it is something that I probably get probably after homeless, the second highest number of complaints about. And then it also, from that, because of the crimes of violence associated with the illegal grows, it's also the one that's probably most likely to impact random neighbors.
Right. I mean, for me, it's like, because legally you're supposed to only have it at home, right? The marijuana,
Correct.
Right, at your house.
Yep.
And people have it everywhere, right? So,
they drive down the road smoking it. They can get a DUI for that too.
right. When I went to my son's airborne graduation, I actually upgraded my rental car. Right.
Okay.
We get in it. This is flying to Atlanta. We get in it. And we're walking through the airport outside, and we can smell marijuana. I mean, my wife's from Hawaii. She's like, it doesn't smell like that in Hawaii. But we're walking through, and it's like, so we think it's in the air, right? No, it's in the car. It took me 2 days to get rid of that because I had to drive to Columbus.
Right.
And they're like, trade it out once you get there, and that was a nightmare. Okay. We have about 1 minute. They're trying to understand how many minutes we have left. So for me, I was like worried because what if I got pulled over, right? It reeks.
Right.
It wasn't like just a little bit. When I kind of explained to them, when they were like, oh, so it's like a dirty car. I'm like, no, it reeks. You don't understand. This is not very lightly.
Right.
And so, finally get rid of it. I'm worried about going to the base and rolling down the window and putting it, what I mean? It's like, no, this is not me.
Right.
So not only that part of it, but then the legal stuff, people have it on themselves and they get it in cars and they make it, so there's other issues that we have.
Absolutely.
Sheriff Jeff Dirkse, I really appreciate you coming in today and talking to us about
what's
going on in Stanislaus County and what issues we have and how you're fixing some of those. I really appreciate it. We'd like to have you on back in the future.
Let me know. Happy to do it.
Thank you so much for coming in today.
All right. Thank you.